I would like to invite the Innovation and Reinvention panel to come to the stage. So we have Boris Asaïs as panel chair, and he is the Director of Public Policy Europe and Canada in MSD. We have Ernesto Ciorra, Chief Innovability Officer of Enel, just coming right around me. We have Juliana Lim, Executive Director of Talent at SGInnovate. C.T. Lim, Professor and Director, Institute for Health Technology and Innovation at the National University of Singapore, and Dr. Tanjew Dittgen, Head of Development Sciences in Germany from Boehringer-Ingelheim. So please give a warm welcome to our panel on innovation and reinvention.
Thank you. Thank you, Vicky. Can you hear me? Yes. Hello, good morning. Thanks for coming. A very dedicated crowd. This is the third and final day of this fantastic GAP Summit. Kudos to the organizers. We're going to kick off with, a title, Reinventing Innovation. So that's you're set for some, thought leadership here. As we've heard yesterday from Bill Anderson, there's never been a better time to be in science and in biotech in general. But I'm not a scientist myself. I'm doing public policy for MSD, a large pharmaceutical company, but I'm a lawyer by training. So it struck me that probably anybody doing science in the last millennia felt probably that it was the best time in science. And that's the beauty of science. It's this never-ending frontier to push back or, magnitude of ignorance. But another truism also that came to mind, and also something from Bill yesterday, is that it takes about 20 years for the biotech revolution to be an overnight success. Okay, so I think you're quite cognizant about that. So today we're going to talk about just that, how to turn science insights into products, what we can define as innovation. And though the public law always likes to highlight the genius, the stroke of genius, the individual faced with the unknown, in fact, it takes a whole system, a whole framework, a whole ecosystem to turn science or scientific knowledge into products. Everybody knows that Alexander Fleming invented penicillin, but between his Petri dish and the first patient ever to be treated, it took 20 years of development. And not just 20 years of development, it took also a whole effort financed by the US government, several pharmaceutical companies, including mine, known as Merck in the US, which produced the first batch to treat the first patient. And the whole batch was used to treat one patient. So that gives you a perspective on what it takes to bring science into products. So today we have really great panelists. They will share their expertise. And I guess the topic is going to be about ecosystem policy, bioclusters, and how we organize this marvelous invention, which is really to bring knowledge into products that help people. So I'll start with a quick round of introductions so that you can introduce yourself, and also it helps the audience really locate where you're talking from, and maybe you can not just share where you're coming from, and but also what's your priority thought about the trends in biotech innovation, and which is a constantly evolving phenomenon. So maybe CT, we'll start with you.
Right. Okay. So good morning. I'm C.T. Lim. I'm a professor in biomedical engineering, as well as director of the Institute for Health Innovation and Technology at the National University of Singapore. So in our institute, actually, we are very keen to not only develop medtech and health tech, but also with the aim of translating them and bring them from the bench to the bedside and market. My own research actually involves both basic and translational research. In basic research, I work on mechanobiology. In translational research, we try to leverage on our research outcomes and then try to use, for example, microfluidics to develop diagnostic devices and also wearable technology. So personally, I have actually 6 startup companies. We spent over the last 20 years trying to translate some of these technologies developed in my lab and bring them out to the market. Thank you.
Tanjew?
Yeah, hi, I'm Tanjew. I'm the head of development sciences in Germany, and with that I'm part of a global group of development sciences organizations throughout Boehringer. We have a site in the US also taking care of this topic, and we have 2 colleagues in Japan and in China taking care of development sciences topics. So we have a global network of people looking into innovations that can advance our drug development process at BI. So we're really actively seeking input from organizations, companies outside of Boehringer to get their view on how to improve drug development technologies, how to make it more sustainable, how to make it more patient-centric. I'm trained molecular neurobiologist. I started in a small biotech company myself, did some drug development on a biotech level there, and for me it's perfect to do that as if you're new in your career, and to start this in a small company where you have the huge oversight of what's going on in the company, you have insight in everything that's done, but it's also, my experience was it's very chaotic. And after a couple of years, I really was longing for some more structure. And then I joined BI, a big pharma company, and there you have your structure, you have processes, you have everything is laid out perfectly fine. And then after a couple of years there, you realize, wow, it's so much structure in there, and it's so slow in adopting innovations and change that you really envy then the small biotech companies that are more agile, more nimble in that regard. So what we are doing now, and that's also part of the mission of development sciences, is to learn again from these small, nimble companies, biotech companies, and to try to make our pharma process more flexible, more agile.
Agile, that's going to be a key word. Julie.
Hi, I'm Julie. I'm from SGInnovate. It's a government-backed private entity, so it's only in Singapore you can find such a structure, I think. Essentially, my company deals with a lot of startups. We invest in deep tech startups that are spinning out of academia. We work with corporates to help them in corporate innovation. And essentially, I have the pleasant job of trying to find talent for these companies. Essentially, I think when I started my career, I have a degree in economics. So I have that very econs, a lot of financial background that drives a lot of the business decisions that I make. But at the end of the day, it's always about connections. So you've heard over the last 3 days, it's about people, it's about connections. And now my job is to try to get those connections out to the ecosystem to bring everybody together. It's a very interesting job. I would say it's one of the best jobs that I've done. I love what I do. I love meeting young people, and I love meeting deep tech startups. I love meeting MNCs because they give us challenging problems to solve. And essentially, the reason why I get out of bed to go to work, it's because I think that some of my startups hopefully will eventually really solve world problems that you never know where it's going to come from, but I have played a part in the wider ecosystem in trying to get as many people to solve these world problems as we can, even though it's a little small country in Singapore.
Great. Serendipity.
Yeah.
Ernesto.
Ciao, hi everybody. I'm Ernesto. I'm from Italy, but I work for a multinational company. I was a serial startupper. I founded the first company when I was 20 years old. It was a magazine, and aggregating community of young people that wanted to write for a magazine. At that time, we hadn't internet. I'm a little bit old, and I sold this company to MTV. Probably you know MTV. After I founded a fashion company, we wanted to depict dreams of ladies on T-shirts, and we have sold this company to an international fashion group. The third one, when I was 30 years old, was a company, consulting company, focused on supporting big companies on innovation. That's why I supported very, very big companies in many sectors. In biotech, I worked for Roche, for Abbott, AbbVie, and Pfizer. But I worked to invent new format for cartoons in France. or new format for TVs in UK. I supported banks like Barclays in UK and telcos like Vodafone in UK and many other companies around the world. I personally invented products that you use. I just mentioned one. Do you use the navigation system in your mobile phone? I have invented it. The first one has been invented by me in 2003, working for Nokia at global level. I was the consultant of innovation of Nokia. We were working at Espoo. It was the headquarters of Nokia. Who had a Nokia before? Raise the hand, please. Here you have the demonstration why it's so important innovation. If you don't innovate, you die. It happens with people. Every 2 hours, we change the skin of our lips. Every 24 days, we change the whole skin. Every 15 years, we change 99% of our body cells, even the bones. If we don't change, we die. Why do we change? To survive. So innovation is aimed at sustainability. Innovation is aimed at survival. If we don't change the processes, the technologies, the products, the services, how we work, what we do, we die. It happens to companies. It happens to people. And I just mentioned a failure of mine after I passed the word. I was trying to convince Nokia that making an alliance with a company that was not going well was very important for them. And that company said yes. That company was ready to provide the operating system to Nokia for free for 20 years. Having signed an agreement, according to this agreement, they couldn't enter in the mobile phone industry for 20 years, providing the operating system for free, and just getting revenues from an app store that could be managed together. So providing operating system for free, not entering in this sector, Nokia said no. And Pekka Ollikalasvuori, the former CEO, told me, what can we do with this corporate zombie that we can't do alone? We are Nokia. We have the 72% of global market share. We don't need anyone else. The same logics that I've heard from big biotech companies. We are beep, this company, we don't need anyone else. We are the largest one, we are very important, we are the best scientists, we are the smartest people, we don't need anyone else. That corporate zombie was, try to guess, Apple. I was working with Steve Jobs and the head of legal on this agreement that I have at home, signed by Steve Jobs. According to this agreement, for 20 years, Apple couldn't enter in the mobile phone industry and provided for free iOS. But Nokia said, no, we don't need them. It's a corporate zombie. So big companies under-evaluate the potential disruptions coming from other sectors because Apple was not in that sector, was from another sector. ICT, not mobile phone industry. I'm here because I now lead innovation and sustainability of the largest producer of renewables in the world. The name is Enel. It's a company coming from Italy, but active in 42 different countries. Here in UK, the most advanced energy service is called Demand Response. Who is the leader of Demand Response in UK? Enel. What's the leader of renewables in the United States? Try to guess. Enel. What's the leader of renewables in South America? Have you ever learned? Enel. What's the leader in Australia of renewables? Enel. You're great.
All right, excellent. So maybe, I don't know if I should leave you the stage because we only have an hour. So I guess I wanted to. So you see, we have a broad set of experts here, and when it comes to a place like Cambridge, maybe I wanted to hear from our colleagues from Singapore and CT in particular of how do what has been the trajectory for Singapore looking to places like Cambridge here, but also in the US, and the San Francisco area, because I've seen over 15 years at least a very ambitious program. So maybe can you outlay for the audience your thinking and your understanding of how you create this ecosystem between academic science, private sector, and so forth.
Right, yeah. So I must say I'm actually I was a student in Cambridge many years ago. And looking at then and now, I think Cambridge really is thriving. There's this biotech hub over here as well. But in Singapore, I know it's a very small country. We have a population of about 5.7 million people. The size is about only 728 square kilometers. But of course, there are also other countries that are small population-wise. For example, Finland, Sweden, even Israel is slightly bigger. But these are all very innovative countries as well. But in Singapore, I think the government is very proactive in creating a very thriving innovation ecosystem. And one reason is because we don't have any natural resources, and the only way to survive is, as Ernesto has said, is to innovate. And so we, as a small country, can only rely on the people, right, the talent itself. And so we actually have a few strategies put in place to do that. So one is actually to train a very highly educated and very ambitious workforce. So that's one. Second is we have a very open economy, so we invite people to come in. So we have a very progressive immigration policy. Anyone that's talented, we are very willing to let them come in to set up shop in Singapore. The other thing is also, being a small country, we know we have to rely and work with other economies. So we have a very open economy. We welcome people to come and also set up business as well. In fact, the last, I think, 1 or 2 years, we are seeing a lot more family businesses being set up in Singapore to support the startup ecosystem. If I can show you some, recite some of the statistics. If you look in terms of venture funding per capita in the whole world, Singapore is actually ranked number 1. In fact, Singapore being 5.7 billion people, our funding per capita is about $1,400. Next is Israel, right? About 9 million people. Theirs is about $970. And if you look at the next one, for example, US, right? 330 million people. Theirs is about $808. In terms of UK, with 68 million people, the funding per capita, the venture funding per capita, is around about $474. So you can see that the government is actually putting a lot of effort in not only setting up a thriving ecosystem, but also bringing in funding from the VCs, family businesses to come in and set up shop. But of course, people will not come if the country itself is not stable. So the government is also putting in place a country that's not only stable and safe. The only thing we can't control is weather. It's all hot and humid all year round. It's summer. But apart from that, I think it's a very safe and very stable country, very conducive for people to set up businesses. Of course, I was actually doing some shopping at Marks and Spencer's just yesterday. I was comparing the prices on bread. Wholemeal bread over here just costs 70p. In Singapore, it's 5 times as much. And the same goes to yogurt. But of course, if you are buying something that is more local and more Asian, it's certainly much more cheaper over there.
Maybe I can just add on, if you don't mind, to what Siti
yeah.
said. I've been in the ecosystem for a while now, I think about 10 years, and you really see a transformation over just the span of 10 years. In the past, I think the government's idea was to just bring in startups. So SGInnovate, before we were called SGInnovate, we were called Infocom Investments Private Limited. And we have a program actively to scout around the world and bring in tech startups into Singapore, hoping to kickstart the ecosystem. And that was for a few years. It didn't really take off. So what the government realized, or what we realized, was that this isn't working. We need to build our own startups. And there was an active push towards working with academia to try to bring out these talent out of the school and forming their own companies. So it's been 10 years and more in the making. I remembered, my mother actually called me one day and asked me, what the hell is a startup? Yeah, we talk about startups as though it's a relatively long ago kind of term, but no, it's actually pretty recent. And it was very nice to see how this ecosystem has transformed, how the academic field is bringing that research out. It's not just about publishing papers, which NUS and all our universities are famous for, but it's also trying to solve problems. Now, then it's about transforming people's mindset, right? If you're a researcher and you have great research, then you go up to me and you say, okay, I need you to invest in this because it's fantastic research, right? So I'm going to ask you, what problem are you trying to solve? Who's your market? And most of the time, the researchers come back and go like, oh, I didn't think about that. Yeah, so this is the fact that we have to work with academia, we need to work with people like yourselves to see this, to work with big corporates, to try to get corporate innovation off the ground, the VCs to pump in more money. I must say, in the past, our VCs were more traditional. They invested in more technical, digital tech type startups. So SGInnovate was the first to invest in things like cryptocurrencies, or blockchain rather, type startups, in quantum type startups. And we are the ones that kind of gives that signal. So we invest about $70 million ourselves, but we generate follow-on investment up to $800 million. So this is in USD, in case you're wondering. So I think like what CD said, government plays a part, but also you guys play a part because you need to step up, and the corporates need to play a part.
So maybe here, what I hear, which is probably relevant for students or researchers or young researchers, is that when you're coming in biotech in general, I think everybody comes from academia at one point or the other. And so there is this ground in public research. And probably what I hear, if I may summarize from your comment here, is that you're trained to look for questions. If you identify a good question, that's already a big step forward in your work. But then what Julie is saying is basically, well, maybe it's good to answer a question, but what is the problem? And you need to move from the question to the problem statement. And that's probably a key fundamental of this ecosystem of turning science into products. So Tanjew, you talked about this balance between, or your experience between small research groups and large pharmaceutical research labs. And there's, for 15 years ago already, it was very clear that there was a lot of discussions about the productivity rate in the pharmaceutical sector because the onslaught of new science was opening so many opportunities for research. But then at the end of the day, you need to go into humans, and there is, it's a graveyard of great promising products. So maybe you can share a few thoughts about what you've seen in this evolution and how the research sector is reinventing itself. Not so much to gain in terms of productivity, although that's really important, but maybe better manage the full life cycle of the R&D process.
Well, I think we are still struggling as an industry. We are still struggling with this huge attrition rate that we are having. So we have great.
Maybe you can give a few numbers in terms of attrition.
I mean, you have like 60-70% of your research projects never see phase one, and not to speak of a proof of concept. So you're completely you're having one out of 60 projects maybe come to the market. So that you have in research. So it's a horrible rate of success rate you have there. So on the other hand, it's a huge waste of resources, if you will, because you're investing in your compounds, you drive them towards phase one and towards the patients, and you would sort of waste the majority of your compounds there. They never see the market. So I think to work on this problem is a huge potential for the industry. So if you manage to get more predictive models, I think that is the key to success. So we are still having the problem of translating our animal models into a human. So now looking at all the opportunities we have with big data, with artificial intelligence, modeling of compound properties and of compound behaviors. If you make use of that, and that helps you to reduce your costs, helps you to reduce your time to the market, that also has something to do with sustainability then in the end, because you're saving a lot of resources that you can spend otherwise, also money. I can give you an example. What we are struggling with in development, the use of API, the active pharmaceutical ingredient, is very expensive in the beginning, and if you want to have a phase 1 started, you need stability studies, for example, and for these stability studies you do real-time studies, and you use kilograms amounts of material to start your stability studies. On the same time, you have models available where you can sort of stress the material, and you have these accelerated stability studies that are way faster, way cheaper. You need minute amounts of API for that, and they are very predictive. So some countries do accept those accelerated stability studies, but not too many. So many countries still request you to hand in your real-time data. So advancing in that area would save a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of resources, because for every kilogram of API, we generate a ton of waste, for example. So if we save that, we have a huge potential there.
So turning to Ernesto for another big question on reinventing innovation. So what I hear here is that there's when we talk about biotech, we think about the end product, but there's probably a tremendous depth in technologies that are helping companies develop those products. And so there's probably even more opportunities in that field. So maybe you can share your thoughts about looking at it from a different sector, but probably grounded in material science, what you have seen recently. What are the trends that you would stress as being important?
Thanks for this question. People could think, why are you here? You are from the energy sector. So we are a biotech event. But without the biotechnologies, we can't manage the energy of the future, simply. We need raw material. We need rare materials. We need to recycle the products and the services. Otherwise, we will not be able to produce renewables. Because the wind is renewable. The sun is renewable. The water is renewable. But unfortunately, the materials that we use to produce wind blades, to produce photovoltaic panels, are not renewables. We need to recycle them. We are using biotechnologies to extract from mines in a new way this raw material. We need biotechnologies to recycle those materials. What is the biggest producer of CO2 in the world? Do you know that CO2 is producing the climate change? What is the biggest producer of CO2? Who knows it? Please raise the hand.
Steel production.
No. No? Do you know cows? Do you eat burgers? The biggest producer of CO2 are cows. And more people live in the world. More cows, more people eat meat. More people need meat. And more CO2 will produce. I love electric vehicles. I drive an electric vehicle. We are the largest producer of wall boxes, also in the United States, for electric vehicles. But electric vehicles will not solve the problem. Because now we are going to be 8 billion of people in this world. And we need meat for them. More cows we have, more emissions we will have. We need synthetic meat. And this can come from the biotech industry. We will not solve the climate change problem with the energy sector. We need you. We have created a community of people We have aggregated more than 500 people, 500,000 people from more than 100 countries. The name is openinnovability.com. Openinnovability.com. We have involved Wakozu, we have involved Innocentive, another crowdsourcing platform used by Pfizer, Roche, and the other stuff from the biotech industry, because we need your ideas and your proposals. I have a very fast game to play with you. Do you want to play? No, because I could mention a song, say, forever young, I wanna be forever young. I wanna be forever young, and you are young, and young people want to play. Unfortunately, listen to the panelists is sometimes boring, so playing is more interesting. And can we make the game? I asked, okay. Let's make a very simple sum. Simple sum. It's not a complicated equation, okay? Not differential equation. Simple sum. Please say loud the result of this. You can play, yeah? If you want, you can.
Sure, sure.
Please say loud the result. 1,000 plus 40 makes?
1,040.
And now?
2,040.
And now?
2,070.
And now?
3,070.
Now?
3,050.
Now? And now?
5,000.
So, please say 5,000 who said 5,000. Raise the hand. Raise the hand. Be honest. 5,000. Don't do this like Dr. Strangelove. Okay, 5,000, 5,000, 5,000, 5,000. Raise the hand. Do this. Not like this.
I see 12,000.
Okay, great. Okay. Some people say 6,000 or 7,000. Okay. Me, I said 5,000 when Professor showed to me this game that we did at a very important event. The professor was the inventor of the 6 methodology, was professor at Oxford, Cambridge, and Oxford, and Harvard. The only one who was professor in those three very famous universities. And Edward de Bono. The correct result is 4,100. But you say 5,000, I say 5,000, they say 5,000. Obviously, you did university, you attended university. Probably you are engineers and researchers too. And unfortunately, you failed making a very simple sum. This is a very simple sum. If you ask a 7-year-old kid, it will do right. Or she will do right. She is better. I'm sure that she will do right. Unfortunately, I missed the right solution, and you did. Unfortunately, we are wrong, because I have hacked your brain in 20 seconds. I ask your brain to follow a dominant rule. The dominant rule here is add 1,000. I have asked your brain to follow this dominant rule. Add 1,000, add 1,000, add 1,000, add 1,000. Your brain has learned the dominant rule, and your brain didn't follow the mathematical rules that you have studied for 20 years. I have canceled 25 years, 30 years of mathematics in 20 seconds with a dominant rule. I act your brain very simply. So what can dominant rules in sectors and in companies do with your brain? If you enter in a company, if you enter in a research centers, they tell you that you must do this, 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 and this. You mustn't do this, 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 and this. And you manage your research in this way, with these mental constraints, with these prejudices, and you will not invent anything new. This is the problem. Your dominant rules kill your creativity. More you know of a sector, less you are an innovator.
And actually, there's a very good example. Thanks, Ernesto, for showing how stupid we can be, or gregarious.
That's why we need people from other sectors to help us to break the dominant rules.
So, in a sense, there is a very good example of a dominant rule in recent biopharma history, which is the development of mRNA technology. Because if you, there's an excellent paper written by a journalist in Nature from, I think, September 2021. It's the Tangled History of RNA Development. Excellent paper. There are, now there have been books and so forth, but if you want to have a brief history. And what's interesting also is that since it's a journalist or a research writer, he's more interested in who might claim credit from a Nobel Prize standpoint, and which is which makes it a good read, because you don't have like the whole corporate agenda and the IP and so forth. And so, but basically the story, which is really interesting, is that the vast majority of academia or the private sector, to that matter, of researchers, was that mRNA was just too weak, too feeble to be used as a therapeutic ever. And that was true even in recent years. People were doubting as early as late as 2017 that Moderna had anything worthwhile. There was a Wall Street Journal article referring to Moderna as probably the next Theranos. So just to give you an idea of the doubt level about this technology, or the potential of mRNA as therapeutics. So it's really interesting, because the dominant rule in academia and also in industry, although there has been a series of partnerships and attempts, everybody has looked at it over the last 20 years. It's a 30-year history, really solid, and then you can go back 60 years to the invention of or the discovery of mRNA. But it's quite striking to see that nobody really got it right from a majority standpoint, and you can really trace the few individuals who kept at it now, either working at Moderna or BioNTech, for that matter. So there's something to be said about contrarians, but at the same time, this dominant rule process is also part of the gregariousness of anything done by humans. So it can be, history is also full of stories of where it can be pretty dangerous not to follow the dominant rule, like saying the Earth is not the center of the of the universe. That some people lost their life over this. So where do we go from this? I have no idea. So we are going to switch back to bioclusters and really to think about, okay, dominant rules, but then you have dominant places. And so how do we, why don't we talk a bit about location? You came all the way from Singapore to Cambridge. Cambridge is a location. Singapore is a location. Boston is a location, and so forth. Do you think that we still rely on a few places on the planet for most of the innovation medicines? Is that still true today? Is it going to change? Are we moving towards a more multilateral innovation landscape?
Yeah, maybe I can say something about that.
And maybe about China also.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I think things will continue to evolve. And the reason why, for example, Boston, Cambridge is doing well, and of course Singapore is also putting a lot of money into research and creating our own hub as well, is because of the strong government coming in, having this strong will to want to set up an innovation hub, and also having the ability to motivate people to come over. Ultimately, it's still people, right? Innovation arises from people, working on trying to solve problems. So I think, you mentioned about China, right? And there, I have a number of interactions with China as well. And if you look at, in terms of publications, they are actually already doing very, very well in the last few years. You look
in terms of what, sorry?
Publications.
Publications.
Technical publications. Of course, they still have a long way to go in terms of trying to come up with products. But that's a kind of a first step, towards being more innovative. And it's all also very political as well. If you look at right now between China and the US, right? They talk about certain technologies that are not being accepted in the US to be adopted. Huawei being one of them, the technologies from there, and also the current war in terms of the semiconductors and the chips itself. That forces certain countries, like for example China, to actually put a lot more effort, resources to actually develop their own industry, develop their own products. So it's an evolving situation. I don't know, maybe in the next 50 to 100 years, whether it will still be Boston, Cambridge, or Silicon Valley, or Singapore, or it could be somewhere else.
Tanjew?
I would think the existence of strong academia is very important. So oftentimes these clusters form around academia hotspots as well. So if you invest and fund your academic research properly, that also might trigger the growth of your biotech sector close by, spin-offs and biotechs. The other thing is if you think about new areas of research, talking about, again, artificial intelligence, data, big data handling, you might need huge capacity in terms of calculating power. You need a lot of energy for that. So you might also see countries that provide infrastructure for IT business properly, that there's also some new hotspots forming along those lines of utilizing artificial intelligence and big data in the end. That would be my guess what could happen.
And Ernesto, so outside the biotech for healthcare is very much related, yes, to academia, but also to a functioning healthcare system. And if you look at where most pharmaceutical products have come in the last 60 years and still today, there is a very strong link with a functioning healthcare system. At the same time, it's a problem from a global standpoint because there are diseases affecting more, tropical diseases affecting countries in other regions, and there is a paucity of research in that field. But outside healthcare, I guess, is the world is the world of innovation in your field more distributed?
In our field, unfortunately, the other players of the energy sector are like elephants in the Stone Age. They don't really innovate, they defend themselves with the rules, the regulations, and they don't take much care about innovation. They want to produce energy with fossil fuels, and they defend their status quo. To be honest, this is the reality, and we have used innovation to lower the cost of renewables in 6 years by 60%. And we did with young people like you, and with the contribution of people from other sectors, using the ecosystems. As the colleague was mentioning, in Singapore, we have innovation labs in Tel Aviv, in Boston, in San Francisco, in Madrid, in Rio, in Santiago, and we have digital events that we manage in London, Berlin, Paris, and Melbourne every year. So thanks to the contribution of startups from all around the world, we have evaluated more than 21,000 ideas, implemented more than 900 projects, and we have successfully implemented and scaled up 250 projects. So from 21,000 to 250, a lot of failures. If you don't fail, you never try. You never try, you never succeed. But we have opened up our hearts and our soul to the contribution of people outside. I think that in the biotech industry, a similar path should be done. I know that there is the IP problem, but the IP problem was the same in our sector. We started sharing our challenges. In openinnovability.com, you can find the challenges. If you have an idea and you propose a solution that we adopt, you get $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. These are the rewards. A biotech researcher came with an idea to reduce the use of soda in our geothermal plant. We have been working with MIT for 5 years trying to reduce the use of soda in our geothermal plants with 0 results. 0. Paying a lot of money to MIT. And a biotech researcher active on bacteria and biological use of bacteria out of the traditional biotech ecosystem came with an idea that she had in 15 minutes. We rewarded her with 35,000 euros. She was very happy, and she told me that we were stupid, because in 15 minutes she found the idea using some specific bacteria to reduce the use of soda in our geothermal plant. I replied that thanks to her idea, we are saving 26 million a year. And thanks to her idea, we have not to pay other money to depollute the land where we use the solar. So she was a bit angry because she said, oh, and you are paying just only 35,000 euros.
No, but I think that's an important
It sounds like
point.
the record industry in Jamaica. Huh?
Yes. So please visit www.openinnovability.com
Okay,
and
we get it,
provide
we get
us
it.
with ideas.
So
you
Julie-
get money, we get value, and let's work together.
Okay, we
let's
get it.
make
we
this
get it.
work more sustainable.
No, I really want to say that before you continue on and the time has run out. But I think what you said really does make sense. A lot of times you think I know, I also make sense if you give me some time. But yeah, so the Renaissance period, right? Michelangelo and all the great artists and all great scientists, how do you classify them? You think about it. Are they a scientist? Are they an artist? They're both. These categories were created by us. We ourselves put ourselves in this box because it's easier to digest, right? At the end of the day, what my panelists said, I think I shared with some of you yesterday at tea, what you need is time, pockets of time to think about it, to actually get all this data you've been collecting over the last 3 days, years, and whatnot from everybody. Don't get me wrong. It doesn't have to be your teacher, doesn't have to be someone older. It can be someone very young as well that inspires you because of something he or she said. And you just think about it, doing things like your gardening, your cooking, and whatnot. And sometimes the best ideas come to me when I'm just chilling. When I'm out with friends and I'm talking and he's telling me what's his problem and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm doing this too. And things come together. We used to have a co-working space called BASH, Build Amazing Startups here, right? We no longer need it because there are many co-working spaces in Singapore now. But back in the day, there wasn't any. So BASH was the first. And essentially, we had like a United Nations in there. People from all around the world came into BASH because they were working with people like EF, Entrepreneurs First. They were working with Plug and Play. All this to generate startups with the corporates, with the innovation centers and whatnot. And it's this, in fact, actually the most ideas came from the wine nights, people lining up at the for coffee in the morning because, you go like, oh, what you doing? And then this person say, oh, I'm doing this. And they're like, oh, yeah. And we attracted people from all over because they wanted to just mix and mingle and soak up the atmosphere. So don't be so fixated. It has to be a fixed process. It doesn't. Sometimes the best things in life come very organically. So just give yourself some time to de-stress, think about what's really important to you, and based on what you study in biology or chemistry or physics, how can it be applied to other areas, right? And I think that's the most important thing, in terms of innovation.
Excellent. So we'll expand the organic volume by opening to questions from the audience. Who wants to? The lady in the back, Heather. Then we have the gentleman in the blue suit.
Hi. Thank you for the interesting panel. I think there were a lot of fascinating snippets in there. One thing I will say is that I will slightly disagree with something that was said, in the sense that I do agree that a lot of pharmaceuticals are being developed in places where there are developed healthcare systems, but there's a lot of innovation in places where healthcare systems are actually not very developed. And because it leaves a lot of room for, well, exactly that, innovation. For the private sector to come in and solve problems that the government is not going to solve for anyone. And this kind of leads to my question, because what can emerging markets do? What can we all do to actually get money and innovation to emerging markets to make this happen?
So, go ahead.
There is a very famous researcher I was working with in the United States, Vijay Govindarajan. He codified the concept of reverse innovation. He's from India, but he's professor at Teck Business School, one of the most important thinkers in US. And he codified this concept that big multinational companies must go to emerging countries, agreeing with the governments for fast testing new technologies, new products, new services that unfortunately in not emerging countries take too many years to be launched into the market. And this could provide a product or a service before then in not emerging countries, in the emerging country that is working with the multinational company, having a competitive advantage for the company and for the country. In this cooperation, they could do a lot of stuff. We did in some countries in South America, and also not an emerging country, in Denmark. We launched the first vehicle-to-grid service that is, I don't describe it, but it's an emerging, very innovative service in the energy industry that was forbidden in Italy and in Spain. But the Danish government immediately said, we do all that you need, changing all the regulations to speed up this activity. The same happened in Chile and in Brazil with the governments. So the dialogue with multinational companies and governments could be very effective in favor of the both. And this Vijay Govindarajan theory, reverse innovation, is very important because it demonstrated with many cases that you can go in emerging country and after you can re-import in your countries.
Yeah. Maybe I just want to add on as well. From my perspective, I worked with a startup founder who's a doctor, by the way. So she has her own private practice. She's a specialist, ear specialist. And during her spare time, she goes to developed countries to help children with hearing problems. So a lot of times in these developing countries, the child in a village has middle ear infections, and they need to go to an operating theater to remove the fluid and whatnot. So in the spur of some thinking, she was thinking, one day she took her daughter to pierce her ears. And she was thinking, why can't the operation be in the field as simple as piercing one's ears? So that's where she started this innovation journey, working with fellow doctors as well as engineers to come up with a handheld device that's able to drain the fluid from the middle ear, right? And now she's still in prototyping and whatnot. But essentially, I think it doesn't have to mean that it has to come from a specific person or a specific country. So she's Singaporean, she's based in Singapore, but she's thinking of people who are in the third world countries, right? So I think it really depends. If you have a call for solving a problem, then yeah, the world is your stage. You can solve any problem.
So I would agree with you when it comes to health interventions, and those were examples of such. Actually, there is an old paper called the Innovation Sandbox. It's probably 15 years ago, and it showed that when it comes to, for example, cardiovascular disease or eye therapy, India, Mexico have had greatly innovated. And again, for the reason you mentioned, is that when you have a legacy health system that is really not functioning, it does open the space for different types of intervention, mostly in the private sector. But they had tier pricing model in India, and probably you can get really stellar cardiovascular surgery in India because they just do that. So you have chains, very different model from what we have in Europe, it's true. For pharma, it's a bit different because yes, you can have biotechs in India again, but so far they will focus on the US market. And that's what I meant with the gap. The gentleman here in the blue sky suit.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Brian from the University of Tokyo, but I'm originally from the Philippines. So I'm glad to see Professor Siti Lim and Juliana having like an Asian perspective on innovation. And touching upon Siti Lim's earlier mention about Singapore as like a natural resource deficient country, Japan is also the same. Like it has no natural resources, but it has been enabled to advance itself through its manpower. So having said that, we can say that adversity is the mother of innovation. However, in my country, like Philippines, we're not moving towards that. There's much adversity, but there's lacking in innovation. So what I would like to ask is, in your opinion, what would neighboring Southeast Asian countries learn from Singapore in developing its biotech and health innovation? And also my second question is another problem in Southeast Asia is brain drain. So brain drain is when your talented pools go outside of your country to seek greener pastures. And honestly speaking, I think I'm going to be one of that statistic.
Oh, no.
So I would like to ask your opinion on the two matters.
So
Thank you.
Julie, brain drain, you're a main driver of brain drain, I understand.
Yes.
But I understand also there's not even enough space in Singapore, so how do you manage that?
That's not true. Just go upwards, people, upwards.
Or downwards.
Or downwards, depends on the price range. But so in my opinion, I don't think, there's this brain drain thing is a very narrow concept. Someone wins, someone loses. What makes you think that now that you're here, you're not going back to the Philippines 10 years from now to contribute back to your country, right? I think it's important that people go around the world and they travel, they pick up experiences, and they are open to coming back, right? So a lot of Israelis are all over the world, but do they contribute back to Israel? They probably do in some way or the other, right? So that's the idea. We have many Singaporeans here also in the UK and in Europe, in Australia. The essential part is how do you connect them back to the motherland, right? How do you make sure that when the time is ready, they are willing to come back, they're willing to contribute, they bring with them their experiences. So you guys know Microsoft 365, right? So, people use Microsoft, or you're just Apple people, is it? Okay, right. So Microsoft 365 was developed years ago, and a good friend of mine, Richard, I'm not sure you know Richard? No. Richard Koh. Anyway, he's the CTO at Microsoft in Singapore, but he was one of the original people working on Microsoft 365. And he was working in the US, but now he's back in Singapore. It's funny because you think that, he's in the US, he's not going to come back, but he did. And he brought with him all the experiences and whatnot. He was the one that actually told me, it was quite cute because when they developed the product, they were going to launch it. Just weeks before the launch, the finance guy says, you cannot launch the product. Then he says, why not? Then they go, because Microsoft is not set up for this. It's not our business model. In terms of SaaS. So because we are a software company, hardware company, it was hilarious. So they had to redo, they had to involve the finance people. And he says, Julie, oh my God, you never can tell the finance people, just throw anything at you. So, when you're doing a startup, it's important to bring different people from different perspectives into your company early so that they can help you overcome these challenges. In terms of the brain drain, I always say just treat your people well and stay connected, right? Don't abuse them, that's most important. Give them that respect and freedom.
And maybe there's something to be said also about brain drain between academia and the private sector, because this is also something that pops up. That
the Israelis would disagree with you, though.
Of course.
Yeah.
But probably among the very successful bioclusters, there's also this ability to go back and forth. And I think when you look at some European countries, the Latin countries, for example, there's a great cultural barrier of moving into the private sector as if you're selling out and so forth. Whereas actually it would be beneficiary to be able to go back and forth. And some people feel more comfortable somewhere, wherever they started.
Yeah. So kudos to CT, right? He started 6 companies and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, for my own experiences, I have postdoc students who either they help to start companies from our lab, or they actually get approached by the industry. For example, they are paying like twice the amount of salary they are paying
don't be
at the
tempted by
universities.
salary, guys.
But the good thing is, that when they go out in the industry, they actually found some interesting problems that they couldn't solve, and they bring the problem back to the lab. And we get to work together with them to solve the problem and then create IPs, and that generate a lot more more solutions to the problems that you are trying to solve. So I think there's this back and forth, benefits to each other. They may be going out into the industry, and I may be missing the postdoc, but they are bringing certain problems that we can solve and we can work together. I think
the problem there is we become the victim of our own success, frankly. I was in Australia last week, and a lot of the professors were telling me that their students are very comfortable where they are. And they don't want to do anymore. I mean, they think of innovation, but it's more for their local context within Australia because they're big enough to service that market. It's not too small, but it's not big, but they're comfortable. And that's the problem, I think, trying to get people to pass that hurdle, right, of being just comfortable. In Singapore, being Asian, Most parents, CT might disagree with me, but most Asian parents will say, study hard, be the lawyer, the engineer, the doctor. Don't do a startup, don't be an entrepreneur, don't do innovation, because it's not going to make the money. You're going to be suffering for the next few years or more than a few years. Yeah, you can't own your own house, terrible thing in Singapore. Yeah. So, these are things that we need to challenge. I work with MOE, the Ministry of Education now, to want to push the students forward. I tell you a sad story. My daughter, when she was about 10, came home lamenting how she wouldn't be able to study about the Mariana Trench. So I was like, why are you sad? You can read about it in, your search. And you know what's her reply? Get this, okay? Telling the mom, because I won't be tested. Can you imagine? At age 10, because she won't be tested, so why study for it? It's depressing from an innovation perspective.
So I guess, we need to wrap up.
Just very fast note.
Yeah, very fast note.
About private sector.
The concept.
Private sector and about private sector.
I only want to hear from you how we create an adversarial environment for people not to feel too comfortable.
No. I don't think I created an adversarial environment. Private sectors, unfortunately, they don't share clearly their challenges because they consider that it's better to keep them secret. So it's like if you want to meet a lady or a man and you don't go outside your house, you never talk to anybody. How can you find your girlfriend or boyfriend? It's impossible.
Swipe right.
So companies, unfortunately, companies don't share the challenges, the technological challenges, the social challenges, their problems. They think that it's better to keep them secret. The problems must be shared. Exactly the open innovation approach or the open innovability and innovation aimed at a more sustainable world is aimed at sharing the problems, sharing the challenges, sharing the failures. If you don't share, you cannot have the support of the academia. Every 6 months, we meet MIT, Berkeley, Columbia, Harvard, and many other universities in public events, and we share our problems, our challenges, the deep tech challenges that we have. We say that we have dependence from China for this raw material. We don't want to be dependent on them. How can we kill these materials with new ones? We share publicly. Unfortunately, in this sector, I have not seen companies sharing the problems, the challenges, the failures, because they are perfect. So they want to depict themselves as perfect.
All right, so with these, philosophical words, and I would say, the question of sharing and open innovation is a broad topic. It's also true in academia. I'm not an academic, I don't do research, but I understand that it's very competitive as well, and the sharing process is not a given. But I hope you got some elements in order to reinvent your own view of innovation. In any case, the science progress and even the process of innovation has to adapt, so you will have to invent it for yourself. Thank you very much for joining us today.